All right, so the world geography activity, what we're going to do is we're going to take this list right here of the different territories and landforms and waterways and all that kind of stuff. And we're going to label it on this map. Now, hopefully you can already tell this map is not all that big, and so to get all of these on here, I've got to do a couple of things. I've got to write pretty small, but I also have to write very legibly. Then we're also going to color it in and kind of give it a color scheme. But we don't have to color each thing that we label separately a different color. What I'm going to do as a color scheme for this is I'm going to basically, all my land is going to be green except for any country that I'm going to label or highlight. And so then I'm going to use a different color. The color I've chosen to highlight these countries with that I'm going to be dealing with is yellow. You can choose, I would recommend any light color, because since you're going to be labeling some things in those countries and territories, if it's a darker color, it's going to be harder to see your writing of the labels and the names and all those kinds of things. So I'm going to go with something light. Any of the land that I don't really care as much about in terms of territory that we're not necessarily labeling, I'm just going to go with a green, because you can kind of make a, connection that land is green and that kind of thing. I'm going to also then color in all the oceans blue for the same exact reason. Okay, so just to give you an idea, I'm not going to do this whole thing in this demonstration. I'm going to give you a general idea of how this works. So I'm going to look at my list, and there's a number of different things on here. There's a lot, and so I've got to make sure I'm getting all of these things. So the first one here, China. So what I'm going to do is I've got my textbook. I'll show you, here's my textbook, and I've turned in the front of the book, there's a bunch of atlases, and on page A3, here's a world atlas. If I look through this, it gives me some geographic features. Then it gives me by region, so we've got North America, we've got Mexico, we've got South America, Europe, Asia, and as I start working through some of these different things, it's going to be a lot easier for me to just look on, most likely, the different regions. If I know where a thing, an item is, if I know it's in the Middle East, I'll look for that Asia or Middle East piece. So the first thing I've got on my list here is China, and I can see China is right here, so I'm just going to label China, so I've got to locate that on my map. So here's my map. Here's China here, so I'm just going to nice and small, but legibly, I'm going to label that China. Now the first one's done. Japan, here's Japan, so I'm just going to label that Japan. Okay, I might have to go off of the actual island. It's not going to be easy to fit those in there, so I'm just going to go with that. Okay, so I've got that on there. And I'm just going to be doing that. Now, I also know that since China and Japan are going to be countries that I kind of keep track of, they're going to be countries that I'm going to color in yellow. That's the color scheme that I've chosen to go with, and I'm going to stick with that and color those areas in yellow just to highlight them. Okay, and I would do the same thing here with China. What is also nice, and I probably should have an orange one, is just to define different boundaries as I draw out these boundary lines for, let's say, China and those different places. Then that way I can, continue to basically have nice boundaries that I can follow, okay, for these different places. And that helps them to kind of stand out and separate out. And I'm going to want to kind of do those kinds of things also. Okay, and so here's China for me, and I can kind of go off of that. Kind of go this route here, and then I've got China in here, which comes down to here. Okay, so I've got China. This I would color all in yellow as well, and set that up. Okay, and once again, I'm just showing you kind of an example of what I would do here to get these set up. So here's China. Okay, and I've got that colored in. I'll just keep going down the list. What I find is generally easier is I can kind of just pick off each one of these, get those labeled first, and then go from there. Okay, and then like I said, I would color in all the oceans. I'm just going to color all the oceans in blue. I don't have to make it super dark or anything like that, just a nice even shading on here so I can define where land is versus where ocean is and that kind of thing. And I'm going to go through and just label all these different parts. You're going to find everything you need in the textbook on these atlases, and just get that entire thing. It's going to take us a while. It takes a while to get some of this stuff done, but I can go through any of these maps at the front of the book to find that information that I need.